One of the things I've heard throughout my years working with customer service teams and throughout my years of being in retail is, I don't want to reward that behavior. I haven't just heard this phrase, I've felt this phrase. I've had that attitude myself. I understand where it comes from, and let me say right at the outset, it is a valid concern, but it is also an overblown concern in many cases. Let's talk about rewarding bad behavior from customers, and when you should worry about it, and when you shouldn't. Of course, context is everything, and there is no absolute rule, but there is a philosophy that will hopefully help you worry about it less and have a more productive perspective when it comes to rewarding challenging behavior from customers. Generally, the concern with rewarding bad behavior is twofold. One, you don't want that customer to feel entitled to repeat the behavior. You don't want them to think that because they got away with it once or because you rewarded it once, that this will be an ongoing thing. The second concern is that they will infect other people. Other people will hear that you let them do X or you gave them a refund for Y, and then you will have a deluge of other customers expecting the same treatment. The concern is that treatment that you considered a one-time thing, a response to a customer service situation, becomes something that's expected all the time. This is a valid concern, but in general, my advice is when it comes to the first time giving a customer something outside of the norm, you pretty much have to take one for the team. Let's first talk about customers infecting other customers with the behavior. Generally, this is the most overblown concern. Depending on how public the resolution, in most cases, if you give a customer a pass on something, they don't tell the world, and if they do, the percentages are in your favor that they tell it from the standpoint of good PR. The company treated me well and took care of my issue. Of course, this isn't always the case, but it is the majority of cases. Here's what I've never seen happen. A customer complains and gets a free month of your service. They tell everybody and their brother. They post it on social media, and then everybody calls and demands a free month of service. You're swamped with people wanting the same treatment. That doesn't happen. What actually happens most of the time is you save the customer, and they don't say anything, or if they do, almost everyone understands it's not something they can just ask for. What is much less common, but does still happen, is that a few people go, "Oh, cool, all I have to do is complain and I get a free month." And you get a handful of people abusing it. It can happen, but again, the numbers are small, and this is what's important. You may feel like you're being taken advantage of, but you're winning in the end. For the great majority of cases, worrying about whatever resolution you offer, encouraging others to take advantage of you, is not worth the damage you do by not taking care of the customer. Now, what about on the individual level? Rewarding the individual customer so that they learn, like a dog, that if they bark, they get a treat. So here's my philosophy, and I think time has proven it to be a good approach. Worrying about rewarding the individual customer's behavior or demand is a much more realistic concern. And I will say that as a very general rule, my philosophy is this: the customer gets a pass the first time. Now, this principle has a lot of exceptions, but I recommend it as a starting point. You'll have to judge the value of what you're giving or the intensity of the behavior you're allowing to pass. Let me tell you a story from my retail days that might serve as an example. When I first opened one of my retail businesses, we had a couple that would come in for service weekly. They very quickly started to complain all of the time. We were new, so there were certainly missteps, but I could also tell very early on that this couple was going to be a handful. It only took a few weeks before their complaints escalated to demanding full refunds for both of them for the services they have received. Of course, I discussed the matter with them and my manager, and what they were upset about certainly did not seem to justify refunds, but they were regular customers and it was obvious they were upset, so we gave it to them. Then, a few weeks later, the very concern this lesson is dedicated to happened. They demanded that their services be comped again. This time, the service failure was even more minor and was based on unrealistic expectations from the customer, expectations that we had carefully reset many times before. Again, though, they were weekly customers and we were new, so we did not want to lose them. Eventually, we did issue the refunds, but made clear that we were doing this out of respect for their business and trying to give hints that we were not going to go down this road again. Now, it took a bit, maybe a month or so, but then they tried again. This time, I drew the line. I let them know that this had become a pattern and that we would not be refunding their services. They received the services and we delivered what they paid for. Of course, I expressed it less bluntly and used all of my customer service language, but I drew a firm line. They complained even more aggressively, as it was obvious that they were used to getting their way by bullying. Finally, I drew an even bigger line in the sand. I said it was obvious that we weren't able to deliver the experiences they were expecting, and that it was probably a good idea if they went somewhere else for their services. I told them that we'd love to keep them as customers, but we weren't refunding these services. And if they stayed, that we were not going to continue this pattern. They should not expect to complain and get any refunds going forward. In the end, they chose to stay. And while they would occasionally get uptight and complain, while they would sometimes test the boundaries with my staff, they never demanded refunds again and always backed off when the staff offered to elevate the situation to me. What is the moral of the story? Simple. They were absolutely trying to take advantage of me, and if I had to do it all over again, I would still refund them. Both times. Why? Well, the first time because they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Because being paranoid and worrying about each customer getting one over on you is much more costly than simply taking care of the customer in the first place. The second time, I would do it again also because of how valuable they were as customers. They were among our most regular customers. And by that time, I knew they were taking advantage of me, but I decided that they had earned one more chance because of the business they were giving us. And the takeaway here is that after a decade in retail, I have only a handful of these stories to even share. People simply worry too much about rewarding customer behavior that they think will lead to future demands. So, when you worry about whether or not you are rewarding bad customer behavior, try to keep this philosophy in mind. You're better off, in most cases, just making things right for the customer, at least the first time. If you want to learn more about creating better customer experiences and turn your team into customer heroes, make sure to check out our Rapid Hero virtual training courses at customersthatstick.com.